Why are thousands of doctors and scientists worldwide being censored?
Hello, everyone. Welcome to this week's edition of the 5 Stories the mainstream media refused to report to you. We're going to start today with an Orwellian story out of the UK. The police commissioner of the West Midlands in the UK says police officers will break up family Christmas dinners and holiday gatherings if people break COVID-19 lockdown rules. And what are those rules? Well, the West Midlands are currently subject to Tier 2 restrictions, which means people aren't allowed to see anybody outside their own household. So literally, if you go visit your parents for Christmas, police might come break up your Christmas dinner. But did the mainstream media report on this? No, because the mainstream media is in the pocket of the left, and the American left is doing just about the same thing here in California.
It's 2 weeks ago since you were last in the studio, sitting in that very chair. I asked you if there was going to be another national lockdown, and I just want to play viewers your response to that question. 2 to 3 weeks circuit breaker to give us some breathing space to get on top of test and trace. People want to know, is that going to happen?
No.
It was a one-word answer, no. Why should people trust what you're going to tell them today?
Well, during the course of the whole of that interview, I outlined that we would be willing to take whatever steps were necessary. But it wasn't necessary at that point. At that point, the advice that we were receiving was that a regional approach could succeed in reducing the spread of infection from those areas where the infection rate was high to those areas where the infection rate was still, relatively speaking, lower. But unfortunately, over the course of the last 2 weeks, the virus has been spreading faster than predicted, and in a way that requires, as you quite rightly pointed out, what the Prime Minister has described as the nuclear option. And we've taken these steps because we believe that it's absolutely vitally necessary to safeguard the NHS at a time when the infection rate is doubling, when the number of people going to hospital is increasing significantly, and when the strain on our health service is such that we do need to take action.
It's a question of trust, though, isn't it? Because, as you say, later on in the interview, you expand on the answer, but when I asked you directly, a simple question, is there going to be a second national lockdown, you chose to give a one-word answer. No, there was no nuance on that.
Well, you were asking, of course, about the context at that time. Was there going to be a circuit breaker of the kind that was being proposed?
2 weeks ago. It's not that long
at
ago,
that time? Well, one of the things about the virus is that over the course of the last 2 weeks, we've seen, not just in the United Kingdom, but also in France, Germany, Italy, and other comparable countries, the spread of the virus being greater than any of us had anticipated.
Just 2 weeks ago, we did know, though, didn't we, that cases were rising. Sage were already recommending a national lockdown. We knew that deaths may go up as well.
Well, we also know that at that time, the advice that we were receiving, including from the Chief Medical Officer and the Deputy Chief Medical Officer, was that a regional approach could work. As the Chief Medical Officer last night said...
Well, that's not what Sir Patrick Vallance said. He said that Tier 3 restrictions weren't going to be enough to bring down the spread.
I think you're confusing two things there. The first is that Sir Patrick and others said that Tier 3 restrictions on their own would not be enough, and that is why we were in negotiation with local authorities, something we were discussing 2 weeks ago, in order to ensure that we had the base Tier 3 restrictions plus additional measures. And those additional measures have been put in place in Liverpool, in South Yorkshire, in Nottinghamshire and elsewhere. But it's also the case, as the Chief Medical Officer pointed out last night, that there's no good time, no perfect time to act at that stage. It was entirely possible that we might have been able, using a regional approach, to balance the need to combat the virus with keeping as much of the economy open as possible. And that's always been our strategy. But just last week, I was talking to my counterpart in the French government. There, they were also pursuing a regional strategy and indeed augmenting it. But again, the spread of the virus there in France compelled the French president earlier this week to acknowledge that a national approach was required. All of us have been faced with data, which means that the original projections about the spread of the virus actually underestimated it. And again, at the time that our scientific and medical advisors were talking about the future spread of the virus, there were a number of people entirely in good faith who questioned that. Well, actually, the situation has been worse than any of us expected, and that is why action is now required.
The prevalence of this disease has been going up extremely rapidly over the last few weeks.
Afraid from Thursday, the basic message is the same. stay at home, protect the NHS and save lives.
It is Sunday, the 1st of November. Our top story on the programme this morning: England is to face a new lockdown starting on Thursday, scheduled to last a month after Boris Johnson announced that he needs to take action to prevent the NHS being overwhelmed by cases of coronavirus.
We've got to be humble in the face of nature, and in this country, alas, as across much of Europe, the virus is spreading even faster than the reasonable worst case scenario, and so now is the time to take action because there is no alternative.
The last resort had become the only way forward, he argued, and in a matter of days, tough measures would be imposed, severely limiting people's lives.
We will get through this, but we must act now to contain this autumn surge. We're not going back to the full-scale lockdown of March and April, but I'm afraid from Thursday, the basic message is the same. Stay at home, protect the NHS and save lives.
Why are thousands of doctors and scientists worldwide being censored? Why is it not allowed for medical experts to speak out about the COVID-19 vaccine and about effective treatments for COVID-19? We are in an age of unprecedented censorship. Freedom of speech has completely disappeared on planet Earth. Literally thousands upon thousands of documentaries, interviews, programs from doctors and scientists have been removed from the internet. Their websites have been taken down without any warning. What is going on? Why is there such an aggressive push for a vaccine for COVID-19? Why is literally every successful treatment for COVID-19 being banned from so many countries? There is something going on.
I'm delighted to be accompanied by the Garda helicopter overhead, who've clearly been warned that I am here. But I'm here because I have some very important information to impart in relation to a development that has happened in the United Kingdom in relation to the COVID-19 hoax. And you know that for the last 8 months I have been entering hospitals in this state and exposing the fact that they are empty. My latest one in the matter has gone viral worldwide. And of course we know it is the case that these hospitals have never been emptier, probably in the history since Fianna Fáil and Fine Gael took over, and we are in the midst of a so-called pandemic. We know that at this time of year our hospitals are normally packed to the gills, as they are in late February, March, April at the end of the winter season. But they were empty then and they are empty now. We know that many people are now starting to question whether this virus exists at all. But a Freedom of Information request can now confirm that it does not appear to exist. We know that it probably doesn't because we don't see it anywhere. We don't know anyone who has it. We don't know anyone who has died from it. We know that every single death that has been attributed to it is very questionable. And we know that in front of the so-called committee that was supposed to ask questions about this virus, they established that if you fall off a roof, you will be put down as having died of COVID. So people are right to question whether this virus actually exists. But we now, in Europe for the first time, have the scientific proof that it does not exist. And this is thanks to a Department of Health letter that has been received following a request by a citizen in the UK, which he actually had to appeal. But he requested the Department of Health and Social Care in the United Kingdom to give him scientific proof of the existence of a virus called SARS-CoV-2. And they confirmed, and I will read it now to you, that the Department of Health and Social Care does not hold any information on the isolation of a SARS-CoV-2 virus. In other words, it does not exist. And be in absolutely no doubt that this criminal mafia organisation behind me, NEFIT, will neither be able to prove that this virus exists. This follows what the CDC admitted to recently, the Centre for Disease Control in the United States, who admitted that they have not isolated in a human being the SARS-CoV-2 virus.
Believe in a God at all, you will be affected. The cracks are beginning to show. Maybe you choose to ignore it. Maybe you don't know how to face it, or maybe you think you're alone in this. For most, this is nothing more than a story, a diversion from the outside world. But within some of you, a feeling is starting to stir. It's time to stand up, with eyes open, ears down to the ground. change is long overdue. So wake up. Question everything. Are you awake? Wake up. Now.